Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm excited as always to be here with you, and also excited alongside me is Mr. Paul Bindig.
Always excited when I'm with you and when I'm talking to our listeners out there in Keyboard Chronicles podcast land.
Yeah, no, it is always fun, and fun's probably the word to apply to our current guest, Mr. Paul Cornish. We've just gotten off an hour plus conversation with Paul, and just it's hard to understate the diversity of his career, from incredible jazz playing through to some of the coolest rock and pop and alternative music, Paul.
Yeah, he certainly worked with some really prominent artists and done some wonderful things. And as you said, David, he's a serious jazz guy, as you will learn listening to the podcast. But he works in some pretty cool rock pop circles, and it's all very interesting music. And by interesting, I mean real good.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's hear about how good it all is, and go to Paul, and we'll talk to you after the show. Paul, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, sir. How are you keeping?
Good. Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I thought we might kick off, Paul, with just talking about your last 12 months. I mean, you're a busy guy at the best of times, but what have you been up to over the last year that's kept you busy?
Oh man, where do I even start? I've been touring a lot with the great saxophonist Joshua Redman. Um, and then I'm also in a band called Thumpasaurus. We've been doing a lot of projects, and then starting to launch my own career as an artist. I recorded my album and got signed to Blue Note. So it's been
a bit of a busy year.
Just a little bit.
And so we're going to cover all three of those topics plus some. So, but before we get into that, Paul, just tell us a little bit about your own musical upbringing. So what got you into music in the first place and made you develop the passion you have for it?
Yeah, so a couple things. So I grew up in the church. Like, both of my parents were very involved. My dad preached, and my mom would direct the choir. And then I also had a couple older brothers that were involved playing and are also great musicians. Since I can remember, like from when I was 2, I was like trying to like be around the instruments, and I would like stack boxes and try to recreate everything that I heard. And then my mom, she just loves music. She never formally took lessons or anything, but she made sure me and all my brothers took piano lessons and found the best teachers in our city. So
yeah, so you had those lessons. And so then when did you get to the stage, was it in your high school years you realized this was something you wanted to continue doing?
Yeah, I'd say right around then, like middle school, high school. I went to a performing arts middle school and also performing arts high school. And I think just kind of being around kids my age that were also very passionate about music, and then meeting people who actually made a career out of it started to kind of get my wheels turning. We're like, maybe I can do this.
Were there any particular inspirations at that time at high school level? Was there someone that came along to a class or something and thought, okay, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I would say even before that. So I got introduced to jazz again, like in middle school, because we had a jazz band. But I really had no idea what it was. I went to this camp in Houston, Texas called the Summer Jazz Workshop. And this kid showed me a Robert Glasper record, and that like totally just like blew my mind. And I was like, I didn't even know you could do that on the piano. If that's what's possible, then I want to do that. So I would say Robert Glasper was definitely, especially in the beginning, a huge inspiration. Still is, sure.
So, Paul, on getting through graduating from school, you then went to study at the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz,
yes, sir.
Which is very exclusive. And I understand you were one of very few people to get a full scholarship to get involved there. Can you talk us through what was the audition process like to be able to gain that?
Yeah, it's kind of intense, depending on the type of person you are. But I think everyone is maybe a little nervous going into it because, initially you have to send in pre-screening recordings, and the recordings are very specific. It'll be like 7 different recordings, but all like different styles and from different eras. And then I think they say, a lot of them say like, okay, this one you take 2 courses, this one you take one chorus and then comp. This one is transcription of like a stride piano thing. It's just like all over the place. So there's that. Then from that pool, and people from all over the world are like sending in tapes, and then they select, I think, 5 on each instrument, and then they send you a list of like 20 tunes to prepare for the in-person audition, and then they just throw you in random groups together, people you've never met, you've never played with. You just have to come together and play these songs. You don't know what songs they're going to pick until the day of. And then when you walk in, it's a very small room, and as soon as you walk into to your right, there's a table, and Herbie Hancock is there. And at the time of my audition, rest in peace, Wayne Shorter was right there next to him.
Wow.
And then you had Ambrose Akinmusire right next to him. And then the great flautist and composer James Newton was right next to him.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. And I always tell people that I'm grateful I play piano, because the piano was facing the other way and everyone else had to look straight at them the whole time. I could just kind of be in my own world, looked at the back wall. And I'm grateful for that, because I think that got me through it.
So how old are you, Paul, when you're going through this process?
I was right out of undergrad, so I was about 21, 22.
Yeah, well, it's a big moment for a young man, and playing in front of people I assume are your idols and your heroes at that point in time. It would have been a very. What do you said you were lucky in that you didn't have to stare into anyone's eyes. You could look at the wall. But what else were you doing to prepare and just be calm in the moment so you could deliver the best version of yourself?
Yeah, I mean the funny thing is that, like, you know, those guys have heard it all before. Like, nothing is really going to impress them, and that kind of gave me relief in a funny way. I know it's usually the opposite, but I was like, there's all I can do is be myself. And also I wanted to play from a place of gratitude for the opportunity to be there, and to honestly, like you said, those are people I look up to and have inspired me to want to do this. So I always, when I'm in those situations, I look at me performing as a moment to say thank you and gratitude, and to offer, kind of where their inspiration has led me. So yeah,
I think that's a really excellent tip for anyone who might be getting a bit of anxiety around performances. Don't make it about yourself, right? Make it about the gratitude for the opportunity. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's really good. So tell us about the experience of studying there. If you could say a couple of highlights, was there something that you really learned there? I mean, obviously you learned plenty of things, but some key things that have really stood you in good stead that you learned from your time at that institution.
Yeah, the program is amazing because it's not like a traditional school program at all. You're thrown into this class of like 7 people, and you kind of rehearsing yourselves every day. And then every few weeks or so, they'll bring in a master to come to work with us. So a lot of times we have like Billy Childs, Mr. Hancock himself would come in, kind of once a quarter, and then all kinds of people, Chris Potter, Chris McBride. So I think my biggest takeaway is that, like, there isn't any one way to do this. Everyone's kind of found their own path in their own way. And I think if anything, it made me kind of focus in on what are kind of my strengths, what are like my preferences that I want to pursue. And it kind of gave me the confidence to kind of lean into that more. And then I don't know, there's this one moment we would do these like history of jazz presentations, and I remember just getting so fixated on like playing the characteristic things, and kind of this way of like proving that I know, each style. And then one time Herbie came in and just like sat in, I think we were playing So What? We're talking about modal jazz. And I don't know how to describe it other than he just played. Like there wasn't any, like you could tell he just wasn't concerned about any like stylistic thing, which is like obvious. It's so obvious. Like he just sat down and played, and it was just like, I don't know, it was kind of like a liberating moment in that moment where it's just like, I don't know, that made me think like I don't want to play in a way that's like trying to prove, that I know things to people. If I'm honest with like the process and like what I've learned and just like allowing it to flow through me, then it will be there. So that was kind of like a subtle but like profound moment for me.
Yeah, so I'm going to fast forward to the now. You've had this amazing thing that's just happened for you, where you've signed a deal with Blue Note, and you're bringing out your own album. I believe it's going to be in the Northern Hemisphere summer of
Yes,
this
sir.
year.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that, Paul. What can we expect from you? How's it progressing? How far have you got through it at the moment?
Yeah, so the album's already done. I'm grateful. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share the detail. I don't think it matters, but I actually recorded the album before signing with them, and I was grateful for that because I feel like I really got to make the album that I wanted to make, kind of without any outside influence or suggestions. Because I'm very like, I want everybody to get along. Like, I'm always thinking that, someone, not downplaying my own ideas, but like, I really take people's advice to heart. And, so I know that totally would have, like, my project would have gone in a different direction. It would have been great. But I think this way I was really able to focus and kind of make the album I wanted to make. And it being my first album, I think that was really crucial to kind of just like, make a clear artistic statement of like, this is who I am and this is what I want people to know about me. So yeah, album's been done. It's mostly acoustic piano trio. At the time when we recorded it, I was feeling like, man, when was the last kind of jazz piano trio record that really, I don't know. I feel like we kind of gotten away from the era of like acoustic piano trios. Now it's starting to kind of come back. Some great trio records came out last year. So I don't know. I felt like I always feel like the acoustic piano is just like the fullest expression of who I am. I kind of feel like everything is in there. And I wanted to kind of bring not new, but like, my own perspective through the lens of the piano trio, something familiar. And hopefully you hear it in a new, interesting way.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful, Paul. I've got one question which I know our gearheads will be very interested in knowing. What sort of piano did you use to record your album?
Oh man, okay. This might get me in trouble because I'm a Yamaha artist and I love my Yamaha family. But the studio I was working in, they actually had three pianos that were incredible. They had a Steinway D and they had a Yamaha CF, or maybe it wasn't the newest CFX, but it's one of the newer concert grands. And then they had a short, I think 6 foot, 7 foot Steinway B. And for whatever reason, that B was the one that day. And I don't know, something about it just really had great character. And hopefully you'll hear it on the album. But I was really happy with how we recorded it because, again, yeah, it being like a smaller piano, we were able to mic it in this big room and have close mics on the piano and also two mics in the room, and then I had the bass and drums and ISO booths. So you get this really interesting kind of blend of this close kind of old piano sound, like a lot of those old jazz records, and then you also get kind of like a light touch of this like ECM-ish like room and like verbs sound, but it's not like too far in either direction. So yeah, I'm really happy with it.
I can't wait to hear it when it comes out, Paul. And so you mentioned your trio there, and we've obviously watched some videos of your amazing trio. I'm just interested to dig into that a little bit as far as how did that trio form, and just really fascinated. A lot of us out here that listen and watch this podcast aren't necessarily in trios or even play jazz, and I've always been fascinated. How do you pull together a trio that works, and what's your approach to rehearsing a trio for performance? It's a big question, I know.
Yeah, there's a few heavy questions in there. Yeah, for me, it's really taken some years to find kind of the right fit for my trio. Just because yeah, I feel like I'm coming from a lot of different perspectives, but I think kind of leaving out one doesn't allow you to tell the whole story. So I feel like I found, you know, two other guys that kind of share a similar experience and also allow me to kind of express all the, you know, literally there are no bad ideas, you know, when we're on the bench and it can go anywhere. And to the moment, like we're literally just laughing on stage because sometimes it just gets ridiculous, but like we find our way through kind of everything. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, you know, not just finding killer musicians, a particular type of musician, pretty much like they're basically artists themselves in terms of how they approach their instruments and approach the music. You know, I feel like I learn more about my music hearing how they approach it, you know, than I would have ever even figured out on my own in many years. So I think being around people, musicians like that is inspiring for me. And then rehearsing, I try not to be super strict with rehearsals. You know, the music is challenging, but at the same time, I trust everyone to kind of like get it to the point where they feel good about it. So I never worry too much. I just kind of I use rehearsal to kind of just explain certain things of just like, oh no, this is actually kind of like this. But I try not to say too much because I like to leave room for their own expression.
And
Go
And
ahead.
a silly question, Paul, but I'm assuming at those early rehearsals, you're bringing in scores, like you're reading initially
Hmm.
until you get the vibe up. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, but yeah, none of it is like super. Like I think the longest chart I have is maybe like three, maybe 4 pages. Like at least right now, kind of the time I'm in, I kind of like to just get into the music as soon as possible. So it's not super, but maybe later on, I'm starting to have some ideas of like maybe like flipping some like classical pieces. So that might get into a whole nother realm. But for now, yeah, I just like to get into the music and then I feel like the music will kind of, you know, carry itself.
yeah. No, great response. And obviously, we're keen to cover. I mean, the diversity of your playing within the jazz genre is impressive enough, but you obviously work across a whole bunch of other genres. So, in no particular order, Paul, we're going to run through a few things. So,
Mm,
we'll start with Lewis Cole and
mm.
Noah and so on. Now, Paul and I are unabashed Noah fans, and we're also unabashed Ray Thistlethwaite fans. And I know
Hmm.
you've worked with Ray, so just interested on how you came to work with Lewis and the broader work you do with Noah, which I think it's fair to say is a little bit out there, which is why we love it.
They're they're geniuses. Like I try not to use that word too often because I feel like it gets thrown around too much these days. It's kind of lost its you know, value. But they're really out of anybody I've been around, just how they think about the music, also how hard they work. They're very thorough. You know, they'll be up till like 5, 6 in the morning just working on their stuff. And you know, Lewis has a very particular harmonic style and palette that I think is very much his own. And Genevieve, they're both just they're just incredible. So yeah, how did I meet them? I don't know, honestly, like LA. That's what I always tell people, just LA. I think if you're around here long enough, you kind of just run into run into people, you know, multiple times, and then, you know, maybe the fourth or fifth time is like, yo, what do you do again? And then, or they just see you playing and then you connect and then it's like, hey, you know, you want to, you know, come over and like I think the first thing I did with him was the Lewis Cole big band. And yeah, that was just a lot of fun. That was just like a lot of like friends of mine who I went to school with. Um, I should say too that Lewis went to the college that I went to for undergrad, USC, and but he was a few years removed, and then they would come and play like backyard parties, and my band Thumpasaurus would also we opened for them once, so there was like a familiarity there, but I don't know. It's just kind of
Yeah.
one of those funny things where you keep running into people, you hear them, they hear you, and then you just end up working together.
Yeah. Hey, we should do something. Okay, now we're doing something. That's right.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. As David said, he and I both really love Noah. So I've got some fanboy questions for you, if you don't mind, Paul.
Also,
So
I'm right there with you. Like I
yeah,
discovered their music in high school, so I even though I play with them, I'm still
yes,
in disbelief. You know.
yeah. And look, and to all our listeners and viewers, if you haven't come across Noah, we've mentioned them before on this podcast, but we'll send you some links to go check out Paul's work with them, and that's what I want to ask you about.
Mm-hmm.
So, for those who don't know, this the most recent album that Paul plays on was recorded in Lewis Cole's house, and all the videos which you can watch on YouTube are basically the shenanigans that go on while they're recording the songs, and it sounds absolutely wonderful. You're playing on a couple of songs. One of them is a song called "I'm the President," and what happens in this song, for our viewers and listeners' benefit, is Paul is upstairs playing on a Nord or something like that, and he's got a shirt on, and then it's his turn to take a solo. So he runs down the stairs, turns the shirt around so it's facing the other way. Then he gets onto the upright piano, plays this amazing jazz solo, then runs back up the stairs and turns the shirt around. So I need to know, Paul, did you achieve that in one take?
I did. Yeah, I was very scared because I was like, you don't like. It sounds like a cool idea, when you're thinking about it, but as you're trying to pull it off, something about when you're trying to run down the stairs and like twist a shirt, you just like can lose balance, and like I thought I might fall. Thankfully I didn't, but yeah. Or I thought I might have ripped the shirt because it was also like kind of small, but I was just like, I gotta, pull it off somehow.
Was that your idea?
It was. They had no idea actually, but I just in the spirit of they're also like some of the funniest people, so I was just like I knew doing it that they would be fine with it,
Yeah, well, as you say, and I don't know these people, but just from watching their videos, there's definitely a sense of humour that comes through all of the music, so you can tell they're fun people. So the next question, Paul, for me, were all those tracks laid down in one day, or was that done over several days? Because it looks like a lot of work. There's a lot of moving parts in those recordings.
Yeah, it was a couple of days. I know it was at least a couple of days. I don't remember how many exactly at this point. And also, I had no idea that was we were recording the album, honestly. Maybe they said it at some point, but I know we were rehearsing and then we were gonna shoot videos. Like like they've done like live band videos before.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was just one of those. And like thank God I didn't know it was a record because I feel like I would have probably freaked out or just gotten too nervous. But I really had no idea until the album came out, and I was listening to it and I was like, wait, was that we were recording the album that whole time?
That's brilliant. And I need to ask, Paul, you've done incredibly well with our Australian accents today. Did you get a chance to talk to Ray when you were recording, and did that help you understand us today?
That's a great question. Yeah, it definitely helped. I didn't get to talk to Ray a whole lot during that process because everything was kind of like moving pretty fast. Like you said, we had to get through a lot of songs. But yeah, I've hung with him a little bit before, and yeah, really great guy.
He is.
Also, I actually, when I was at the Hancock Institute, we went to Australia for like 2 weeks. So I feel like
wow,
that kind of helped.
Oh, did you perform down here in Australia?
I did. It wasn't. We were more so doing like master classes. So like
Sure.
we did something at the Sydney Opera House, kind of for like.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, like I think it was like high school. I don't know if do y'all call it high school?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, we do.
Okay, yeah, we worked with like a high school big band and just kind of given different classes throughout the day for International Jazz Day.
Yeah, amazing, fantastic. You mentioned before, Paul, Joshua Redman, the amazing saxophonist, and I also know you did NPR Tiny Desk with him as well, which would have been a great experience. Can you talk to us a bit about working with Joshua?
Man, yeah, another kind of like pinch me moment. Like I grew up on his music and obviously has had some of the most iconic bands of the last quarter century. Yeah, it's been really inspiring because he's just like a machine in the best way. Like very kind of intentional, methodical about his process. And, you know, he never sounds bad. Like he never has an off day. And being around somebody like that just makes you want to be at the top of your game. But even though he's like very particular, he allows us to be ourselves. He allows us, each of us, to bring our own thing to music. So I really appreciate that about him. He's like very generous.
It sounds to me, listening to you talk, Paul, that you work in some very nice environments. I mean, obviously we're talking about quality musicians, but I think that goes without saying. But I'm more talking about the character of the people you work with and what they're like. And is that something that you've sought out in your career, is to, if you're an Australian, so make sure that you work with good blokes?
Yeah, I feel like I've been really blessed in that regard. Like, each opportunity I've been kind of given has also been with some of the greatest human beings, and you really can't ask for anything more than that. Everyone's been very generous and kind of gracious with allowing me to kind of find my way, within everything. So I don't know if I could have sought that out. I mean, you kind of hope for that, but like you never really know until you're around people.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I've just been really blessed.
Or maybe we can pay you a compliment, because I think sometimes the way you treat people tends to be reflected back towards you. So
Mm.
perhaps you're a bloke too, Paul. You never know.
We'll see. I try. I try my best.
I mentioned before briefly Tiny Desk. Can you share with us a bit of what that experience is like, recording at Tiny Desk,
Yeah,
from the behind the scenes, if it were?
yeah, that was surreal. Yeah, that was definitely something I've always wanted to do, and then also getting to do it with Joshua Redman. That was that was kind of a surreal moment, and it was coming right off of my first tour with him. So we toured Europe for a month, then we flew straight to DC, and then we just played Tiny Desk. I think the cool thing about that was the fact that we had already been playing for a month, so I felt like the band was really kind of locked in. Like even listening back to it, I thought that was a really good representation of, where the band, had gotten to within that month. So that, and then you realize that like Tiny Desk is actually in an office, like this, and actually, their desk around. So it was cool to just see the whole space and kind of just see what kind of goes into the whole production. So yeah, definitely one of those cool moments I'll be telling my grandkids about.
How many people are watching when you're performing there? I always get the sense it's more than just the production crew. Am I right or am I
Definitely.
wrong?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think everyone that kind of works in the NPR um, building. So you have a good, I want to say 30 to 40 people, depending on, the artist. And then people kind of have guests. So yeah, it was a good amount.
Yeah, cool. It's an amazing thing, and again, we'll put a link to that in our show notes. But yeah, please check it out, everyone, listeners and viewers. It's wonderful, wonderful playing, as Paul has said. And I'd love to just touch on another artist that you work with, the great Swedish artist Snoh Aalegra. How
Mm-hmm.
did that collaboration come about?
Yeah. So, well, two stories. I'll answer your question directly first. It was actually through this great producer and saxophonist that I met in LA named Terrace Martin. Um, he, I think, worked on with Snow on her last album, and I think she brought up that she needs a new pianist, new keyboardist, and was also looking for a music director. And Terrace, according to him, he says you need to get this guy Paul. And yeah, out of the blue, her manager just reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I'm from Snoh Aalegra's team. We're looking for a keyboardist. Can you send us a clip of you playing one of her songs?" And it was like a moment from the show that was kind of like a mashup of songs, but it was like very involved, where it's just like her and the pianist. So I just had to learn that and then send in me kind of playing it kind of verbatim. That's always a tricky thing of with auditions, where it's like you don't want to do too much, but you also want to show that you can kind of, step out if you need to, if that's what the gig calls for. So yeah, I just kind of sent that recording, and then they asked me, have you have you been a music director before? Have you run tracks? And I actually really hadn't at the time, but it's one of those things where it's like, I'll figure it out. But so yeah, that's pretty much how that came together. But a funny story was that when I first moved to LA like 10 years ago, one of my first gigs was actually with her. And it was at a time where she wasn't as big of an artist. Like she was still kind of like getting started. That was the first time I got to go out of town and play with an artist. But I don't think she remembers that at all. But it all like kind of came full circle.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. And we need to get on to Thumpasaurus, Paul. So obviously an amazing band. Again, how did you meet Lucas and the crew? Had you known each other previously? And obviously that's still an incredibly active and successful project. And as you said, you've just been touring as well. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, funny enough, we're rehearsing. I just stepped out of our rehearsal right now because we're about to record our next album. So we've just been rehearsing for that. But yeah, no, those are like my brothers. Like they're some of the first people I met when I moved out here to LA for school. And yeah, I don't. Well, the saxophonist Henry Solomon, I'd known him from a jazz camp that I went to in high school called Stanford Jazz Workshop. And we both got in USC and then we just started hanging immediately. And then he started playing with this band called The Neighbors, which was like the precursor to Thumpasaurus. And he was like, yo, I don't know if they needed a keyboard player or if he was just like, yo, just pull up to the gig and like bring your keyboard. So I just remember I had this like Motif 7 that like my mom bought me from a pawn shop and I brought it to LA. And I was like dragged in my apartment building was like at the end of this long hall. So I was like dragging my keyboard down this long hall to get in the Uber to go to like this random house party to play with this band of people I'd never met. But it was so much fun and we haven't really looked back since then. Yeah, we started playing more parties. We were doing a lot of cover tunes, like a lot of Beatles, just like drunk college party playlist. And then Lucas started writing his own songs. And then that became Thumpasaurus. And yeah, I have that's some of the most fun I've ever had on stage.
Yeah. And fun is definitely the word that applies to Thumpasaurus, but there's a hell of a lot of musical depth underneath it. So as far as writing the songs and recording the songs, Paul, is it partly a collaborative effort or is Lucas the primary songwriter and you guys provide a bit of input or?
Yeah, it's very collaborative. I will say he writes, I would say the most of the lyrics. And he also just has like incredible output. So a lot of times he'll just send us these demos. He'll just like a week or two will go by and he'll just like have like like 40 demos of just like songs he's written. And then we'll kind of come together and flesh the parts out. And then the cool thing about the band is like, especially as we've gotten older and everyone's kind of gotten into their own lanes, like everyone produces like at a high level. So now we have a situation where different people will take on different songs and produce it and produce the band from their perspective. And I feel like that leads to kind of the unique sound we have.
Yeah, and it's an amazing sound. It's probably worth a little bit of a detour into what is your rig when you're touring with Thumpasaurus and there is such a diversity of music. What are you actually using to pull that off live?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really been all over the place, and I'm actually currently trying to figure out a new because I had a Yamaha CP. I mean, not CP. YC.
Yeah,
YC.
YC. Yeah.
I'll put them together. Why? Yeah. The YC. That was like the perfect board for me because yeah, you have to I mean, it's very similar to the Nord, but like I have hot takes about the Nord. Honestly, it's a great board, but I think it's a very specific sound and kind of thing. So the YC was kind of a nice adjacent kind of thing for me, and that was actually an upgrade from I was rocking with the Yamaha MX for a long time, even though it's more of like a budget board, but there's some great sounds in there, and it's really easy to travel with. So um, when you're flying all over the country and you don't really have a budget for like backline and you also can't be dragging 88 keys on a a plane everywhere, you start to really love like the 49 keyboards you can kind of put in a backpack case. So the MX was like, that was my road dog for a long time. That died. I got the YC. That was like the perfect upgrade. Also really light. Now my YC has died, so I'm looking for kind of the next thing. I'm looking at this V stage. It might be.
Yeah.
I'm here. Everyone's kind of singing his praises. So I want to check that out. I might get another YC, but other than that, I have a Roland System 8 that I don't use it all the time, but that's like the perfect synth board for me because I'm not a super heavy synth user, but I feel like the System 8 I can like jump right in and kind of easily customize sounds and get great sounds. And then I just have like a little MIDI keyboard for like orchids, pads, and stuff.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's excellent. And one other artist, and I know we're not covering in any way all the artists you've worked with, but HAIM. So
Yes.
obviously another, yeah. So tell us a little bit about your work there and what your role was there.
Yeah. Another crazy story of just like, you just never know where opportunities might come from. And so, yeah, just be kind to everybody. But actually, yeah, my good buddy Henry, who's in Thumpasaurus, Solomon, the same one who I met in high school, he was in the Summer Girl video playing baritone. He's the one playing baritone sax. And then Haim just hired him. And then, so he's been in the band. And then they had this guy, Tommy King, who'd been the music director for ages. Like, I want to say like 13 years, like since the beginning. And then he finally just decided he didn't want to tour anymore. So Henry just immediately kind of threw my name in the hat. And then I went to the rehearsals and, well, first of all, Danielle Haim, she FaceTimed me and was just like, that was like my interview of just like, I guess it was her way of seeing whether or not I was like a psychopath or not. Just like, because and I get it now, like being around them. They're sisters, so there's like really like a family vibe, and they only really want to be around people that get along, because that just kind of makes the whole experience better for everyone. So that was the first thing. She FaceTimed me and was just asking me questions, just getting to know me. And then I came into a rehearsal and kind of had to be able to play the set from the rehearsals. And then I was just kind of thrown into the shows. Tommy did the US leg of the tour. I think I did the last show of the US tour just to get a rep in. And then I did Europe with them for like a month. So wow. Yeah, just thrown into the fire, but it was a lot of fun.
And is that still an active gig for you, Paul, as far as next time they tour, or you probably just wait and see?
Yeah, I'll wait and see. I hope so. Yeah, that was really one of the best experiences I've had on like a major gig. Yeah, kind of the total opposite of like some other situations I've had where I feel like it's a full production and it can be stressful. But with them, it's just really high level. Everyone's just really amazing at their job. They're some of the sweetest people. Like, they were taking us out to eat. They were just they asked kind of about your family. Like, I don't know, there's a real family vibe. So I would love to get to tour with them again. And yeah, if not, I'm grateful for the time I have had, because it's really been special.
Paul, reflecting on your career to date, and from my perspective, it's only just started. There's so much more ahead of you, but you've been so successful already and worked with so many top artists. I'm interested in any advice you would give to aspiring musicians trying to start out in the industry. What are some things that have really worked for you in terms of being able to establish yourself and build a successful music career?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think my mom gave me some of the best advice. Still does. But one of the things she's always told me is just, if you're great, people will find you. And so I've always kind of taken that, to kind of mean just like, just continue to really work at what you do. And even though if you think people aren't seeing you, if you really are doing the work, somebody will see you and somebody will give you an opportunity. So that's the first thing I would say. I've gotten to talk to a lot of students recently. I know everyone's kind of worried about, social media and kind of just, posting and just kind of being seen. But there is something too about just kind of, figuratively just kind of putting your head down and just like really kind of enjoying the process along the way. And I think people would kind of take notice of that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Paul. Great advice. We have a question we ask all our guests,
Mm-hmm.
and it's this: can you share with us a train wreck story where you've been performing live and something's just gone horribly wrong? And tell us if you have one of those stories. We'd love to hear it.
The hand over the mouth's a great sign, Paul. You've obviously got
Oh
one.
yeah, definitely. Let me pick one that's hopefully not too embarrassing. But I've had the classic scenarios of like, actually, yeah, I had a situation. I don't know if you know this bassist named Curtis Lundy. He's kind of like he's maybe in his 60s now, but incredible bass player, you know, played with everybody back in the day. But yeah, played with like Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers and Betty Carter, all these people. But I got called to play a gig with him, and I'm nervous. So I'm just like, he's what we call an OG, and this is my first time. Someone recommended me. We didn't really have time to rehearse, but he's like throwing all these songs at me I've never played. So we're playing, and then mid set, the keyboard just falls down, like mid song, like it's mid solo, and I didn't really know what to do, but my instinct was just to like keep playing. And so I just kind of like leaned over in my chair and just like kept the solo going. And then we finished the song, and that was just like kind of a moment. But at the time, I guess it was just like I was just embarrassed. That's just never happened. And then for it to happen in that scenario, it was just like, just kind of crazy.
Love it. And was it an X stand, Paul? That's the question everyone wants to know. Was it an X stand that collapsed?
It was an X stand, and it was just like, I feel like the keyboard is just too heavy for it because it was just like one of those old school large like 88 keys,
No, love it. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Another regular question we ask, Paul, is to tag a keyboard player. So you've mentioned so many great musicians, but is there another keyboard player out there that you would love to hear more about their story?
Man, several. I'm really a fan of everybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's so many incredible keyboardists out there. But I mean, the first name that came to mind when you said that, I don't know if you've talked to Jacob Mann, but
no,
yeah,
he'd be a good one. Yeah,
he would be very good.
Yeah,
I feel like Jacob is kind of under stated for how brilliant he is, and I feel like he's one of those people you don't really know how much he knows until you kind of sit down and talk to him, and he also doesn't really put himself out there much, but he's incredible.
No,
one of my favorites. Yeah,
great stuff. And no, we'll definitely add that to the list, Paul. Thank you. And our other common question is the dreaded Desert Island Discs question, Paul. So 5 albums.
Cool.
If you have to choose them, what would they be?
I'm already just kind of feeling bad for the albums I'm going to leave out because it's just like there's so many great albums because of what this record kind of means to me. And I also mentioned that this kind of what got me started. I'm going to say Robert Glasper, Double Booked. I'm going to say Donny Hathaway Live. I got to go to my church roots. So I'm going to say Ty Tribbett. I say Ty Tribbett Victory Live. Miles Davis, probably say Live at the Plug Nickel. And then the 5th one, that one's tough.
That's all right.
Get this right. I'm going to say Joni Mitchell, Both Sides Now.
Right. Love it. 5 brilliant picks. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And we'll obviously link to those in our show notes so people can check those great albums out. Now, we're going to finish up, Paul, with another ritual we have with all of our guests. It's called the Quickfire 10. So David and I are going to take turns asking you 10 rapid-fire questions and just answer with the first thing that comes into your mind to the best of your knowledge as we go along.
Okay, I'll try.
And the first one's a hard one, I reckon. The first album you ever heard.
Okay, I'm not really sure. The first one I kind of remember was one of my brother's albums, and it was by Eldar. What was it called? I think it was called Blackjack,
Okay.
but it's like one of his first albums. He was like 19.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, great. Before a gig, Paul, it doesn't matter which artist, do you have any particular rituals or things you need to do to feel settled before a gig?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a man of faith, God is everything to me. So I really just try to center myself with like some worship music. Yeah, I kind of have a playlist of like gospel songs that I kind of go to, and that kind of settles me.
Great.
I feel like you were always destined to be a professional musician, Paul. But if you had not been, what do you think your career would have been?
Well, I wanted to be an inventor. Like when I was young, I always thought that was the coolest thing. That an idea comes to your head, and then you can just make it, and then it can just impact the world. So some type of inventor, engineer, something that like creates technology.
Have we got a question for you later, Paul? Favorite tour you've ever done?
I'm gonna say it's probably a tie between the HAIM tour and then most recent Joshua Redman tour for very different reasons, but both were kind of just really inspiring.
Awesome. What's the favorite gig you've ever played?
Probably most recently with Joshua Redman, we played at North Sea Jazz Festival. That was special.
Yeah, a couple of people have quoted that over the years. It sounds amazing, the North Sea Jazz Festival. It really does.
Really, really surreal.
Favorite city you've played, if that's possible?
That's a great question. I don't know, honestly.
It's okay.
I would say probably because I got to go there recently a couple times, Tokyo.
Yeah.
I just love Tokyo.
Yeah, cool. Do you know at the moment, I'm going off track here, but everyone in Australia is holidaying in Japan at the moment.
Yes,
it's the most popular. Yeah, it's very popular. I think it's something to do with the currency exchange rates, but it just seems to be where everyone's going. And I acknowledge that this is an international podcast. In fact, most of our listeners are from the US. And the second most listeners are from the UK. But folks in the Northern Hemisphere, get to Japan as well.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
I cannot recommend it enough, honestly.
It's one of the jazz capitals of the world, too.
Exactly.
Oh, they love jazz music there, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's keep moving. What is a song that you used to love, but now you've played it to death?
I would probably say Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. I'm not this person. Like I'm always like, man, you can always find new things in each song, and if you don't like a song, maybe you're the problem. I'm very like defensive with like saying that songs are, can't be, fresh or anything. But that one I would probably have to say I've thrown in the towel just because too many of these cover gigs I've done where that song just gets played every time.
It does. Great answer. Do you have a favorite music documentary or movie, Paul?
Ooh, music documentary or movie. What have I seen? I mean, honestly, the Ray Charles movie is pretty iconic. I feel like Jamie Foxx did an incredible job with that.
Sure did, yeah.
If ever there needed to be a concept movie along the lines of Sergeant Pepper's, it should be a Thumpasaurus movie. Just saying.
We would love that. I don't know if y'all know that Lucas actually studied film in college. So I mean, that's part of the reason why our videos are kind of the way that they are. But yeah, I think we would love to do something like that. That would be fun.
It would suit you because you do have a very cinematic style, no doubt, to your videos, and there's a cool sort of story going through them. So that would be good. Now, we've got a great question for you here. You mentioned you might have been an inventor had you not been a musician. So please name one thing you would like to see invented that would make your life easier as a keyboard player, pianist.
That's a great question. Okay, two things, because I have actually thought about this. Someone should make a really like portable keyboard stand, like something that just kind of folds up, and either you can put it in your backpack or Maybe it can be attached to like a keyboard case, but those can be some of the most like cumbersome things to just like drag around. So
True.
yeah, and they've gotten close. There are a couple stands that fold, but it's still kind of not really that much more convenient than the regular X stand. So that, and I want to see a keyboard, and I think Arteria actually just did this, but if there's a keyboard where you can you can take your VSTs with you without a laptop, that I feel like that would just be amazing, because I think the best sounds are VSTs at this point. No, they've just gotten so advanced. So if you could take it with you without having to hook up a laptop and a whole rig, that would just be amazing.
Yeah. No, great picks. You should have been an inventor, but I'm glad you stayed a musician.
You never know.
Right.
I might spin the block, when I'm like 60. He's like, you know what? Let me file a patent.
That's right. And the last one in the Quickfire 10, Paul, is your favorite non-musical activity or hobby. What keeps you sane outside of music?
That's like the universal like musician question of like, what do you do outside of music? I don't know. I mean, I love art. Like, I love going to like an art museum, or going to see a film or something. I love getting like inspired just by other mediums of art, and I feel like it inspires me to play.
Oh, great. And speaking of art, that is definitely the term that should apply to your musical output. It's absolutely amazing, Paul, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. We can't wait to see what's coming in the future for you, and we definitely will keep in touch.
That really means a lot. Yeah, I'm so grateful that you all reached out and had me. This is really cool.
And there we have it. Paul, the other Paul, the even more brilliant Paul, is one of those players, and I do encourage people to look at the links we post in the show note to Paul's playing. He's one of the guys that makes you cry with both joy and jealousy.
Yeah, he's a wonderful player, and it's certainly more brilliant than me. I feel like he's better looking too, so I'm a bit annoyed about all of that. But and what a nice guy. Really, I loved his take on just being really humble and open to opportunity, which came through very strong and clear throughout the discussion.
Yeah, no, some amazing insights, and it's hugely grateful to have spoken to him. So yeah, do look out for that, for his first release coming out on Blue Note, sort of June, July, August. I don't believe there's a firm date as yet, but we know it's coming out. So I know I, for one, am keen to hear it.
Oh, I'll be very keen to listen to that. It's just going to be good. You just know it's going to be good. He's such an accomplished player and has such a great sense of musicality in what he does. And what you also have to do, folks, is click on the link in the show notes and look at him changing his shirt around, running up and down stairs, playing a piano solo, and playing a ridiculously great piano solo too, and then running back up the stairs. And as he revealed in that podcast, one take. Did it once, nailed it.
Amazing. No, love it. So, no, thank you to all for listening, and we're always grateful for that. Quick shout out to our gold and silver sponsors. Sponsors. So, Tammy Catcher, Tammy's Musical Stew, thank you, Tammy, for your ongoing and long-term support. Mike and the team at midnightmastering.com, you know our thoughts. They're great.
Hey, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm working with Mike at the moment.
There you go.
Yeah, and he's awesome. We're doing a project together, and it's great. And he's the easiest guy to deal with, very professional. And I'm loving the experience. I hope Mike is too. I haven't asked him that question, but
I haven't asked him either.
From my end, it's been a very good collaboration. So yeah, look Mike up.
Yes, do. And we've even got an episode where we've chatted to Mike and another friend of mine, Steve, about virtual bands, which is worth checking out. And also to the wonderful team at musicplay.com forums, Dave Bryce and the team, highly recommended as well. And then last but definitely not least, the wonderful Dewi Evans from the sunny land of Wales. So another couple of quick news updates. So we've launched, if you're a weekend warrior like Paul and I are, and you play in a cover band or two, or tribute band, or whatever it is. It can be originals, can be a jazz band, whatever. We're currently profiling weekend warriors on our website. So if you go to our website, you'll see that there is a link to Weekend Warriors. All you need to do is click on any of the current Weekend Warrior profiles, and there's a link there as well where you can express interest. And we just want to share the love a little bit and just profile all of us out there that are playing those gigs on weekends, maybe not quite as well known or getting to work with the gods like a lot of our guests, but we just want to share the love a bit. So, and you get to answer a whole bunch of questions about your bands, you get to promote your band, you get to tell us about your keyboard rig and all that sort of stuff. So that's been successful. There's about 5 or 6 profiles on the website, and the response has been huge. I've got quite a backlog to get through.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for, David.
Yeah, I know.
And let me just reinforce what David's saying. What does it cost you to do this? A bit of your time in being in touch with us. That's totally it. So we're purely doing this in the spirit of paying it forward, and as David said, spreading the love and getting all of us keyboard players out there and what we do. So yeah, why not? Why not? We're a community.
If you are scooped up thanks to the profile to some major multinational gig, at least agree to be our guest on the podcast. That's all we.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
So, that would be nice. And you're allowed to be a sponsor too. Then, if you want, if you become fabulously wealthy, we'll reluctantly but humbly accept your sponsorship.
Yeah, we could like that. So, no, thank you for that. As always, even if you don't want to be profiled, we'd love to hear from you. So editor at keyboardchronicles.com. We're on all the socials. Do just search for the Keyboard Chronicles. You will find us. If you can spare a couple of bucks a month to help us out on Patreon, you do get early access to edits of the show before we put them live. You also get the opportunity, when we have enough notice for guests, to ask questions of the guests. So do consider that for what is essentially
I feel like
$3
something
a
happened
month.
at the end of our interview today that could be like a bit of bonus content for our what do you think, for our Patreons?
Yeah, so
I'm not going to say what it is, but it was pretty fun.
Without being too much of a tease, that's right. Paul very kindly added a bit of content at the end that we'll be providing to patrons in the first instance. So, no, thank you all out there for listening. Thank you, sir. Always good to see you. I know we've got a few shows coming up over the next couple of weeks.
I know, it's exciting. I'm actually here for some of these interviews. It's very good. No, thanks, David, for having me. I had a wonderful time talking to Paul. I'm an unabashed fan of his work, and now that I've met him, I'm an unabashed fan of him as a person.
Absolutely. So, no, thank you all out there for listening again, and until we see you next time, keep on playing.